I graduated high school and jumped straight into naturopathic medicine. I've always been fascinated about how things work, and because my mother was a nurse and my father was a trainer in the military, so lots of sports and fascination with health in my family already. So yes, I started studying naturopathic medicine in 2005. Finished that and realized I didn't know enough. So then I started to specialize in nutritional medicine, did another bachelor's degree in nutritional medicine, realized I didn't know enough. So then I went and did another bachelor's degree in Western herbal medicine, and was managing health food stores at the time when blogs on health started to boom. At that time, it was really interesting working in health food stores and managing the shops and seeing what customers were asking in regards to supplements and their uses and how to use them, what doses, what form. And then I started to work in pharmacy and did a certification in community pharmacy. And then I studied public health as a master, so public health and health promotion. I'm really into understanding how things work and why. So I work with your super on the team, really focused on efficacy. So how can we get the most out of understanding what's coming up in the research, and how can we make it really practical to implement what we're learning? I've been practicing clinical nutrition since 2006. And that same year, I was diagnosed with PCOS and Hashimoto's. So I really used what I was learning to nourish myself. And I no longer have Hashimoto's, and I no longer have PCOS, and I have 2 healthy children. Everything's worked out really well, and I'm constantly learning. So I wanted to share some major points of what we're doing at the moment, and also wanted to engage in some exciting myth busting, because this is really fun. So we can get into the content of my presentation. I'll be sharing basically what is research telling us about the meaning of plant-based now. So out of everything that we've been learning over the years and all the different study designs, where have we been and where have we come since then? What actually is the evidence right now? And some myth busting, and then talking about the power and limitations that exist in plant-based medicine, and also practical applications of how to use these learnings. Next slide. So yes, plant-based in 2022. So basically, so much has happened, so much curiosity, so much understanding about manufacturing practices and how that can affect nutrients, making plant-based feel accessible, delicious. And Crystal and Michael and the teams have really gone to the places where we do sourcing and understood the connection between the environment and our food, and how plants evolve within challenging environments to have these chemicals, these nutrients in them that actually help them survive in tough conditions. And then when we consume these foods, we also get the benefits of these developments, this evolution, to enhance their ability to survive. And then our cells are able to also get the best out of those foods. So every time we're looking at developing a mix, we're looking at the opportunities of understanding, like, how is the environment that these foods are grown in, and what is the chemical composition of these foods that have potential for human health? What's the traditional use? What's the impact on the environment? And what does science say about when we actually eat these foods, how do they work in us? So it's a whole huge fascinating topic, lots of different specialties within it. So in the next slide, I'll go into more detail about these specialties. So basically we have human nutrition, and we have food science. They are different fields. So understanding the composition and understanding how foods work is very different to understanding how it works in humans. So when we look at studies showing the health benefits of the plant-based diet, the study results and the way they've implemented things to understand how they work is very varied. There isn't a strict protocol for this in the science, and depending on who's looking at what, they're looking at it from a different lens. So what's ended up happening is when someone's described an intervention as plant-based, it's quite unspecific so far. So basically you'll see like research that says a plant-based diet has this health benefit for this condition, and in every single study you'll look at the version of it will be slightly different, but what has come up consistently is about 50% of the studies up to date have used plant-based interchangeably with vegan. And as we heard yesterday as well, vegan is the buzzword. We associate plant-based with vegan. Vegan is one word. Plant-based is also a bit of a mouthful. And yeah, what does that actually mean? Vegan has a more clear history and understanding. So yeah, 50% of the studies used it interchangeably, plant-based meaning vegan, but actually in the research and the results, that isn't always the case. Plant-based interventions can also mean just including more plant foods than you were consuming before. So looking at diets that may include, some animal products, but in every single study, it needs to be clearly defined as what does plant-based mean? Where are these people? What were they eating before? In the context of what's different, in order to understand where the benefit has occurred based on studying where you are and what has changed and what the difference is in the diet. So it doesn't need to be 100% plant-based or 100% vegan for it to be considered relevant in the plant-based health benefits field. So we really look at this as really good evidence that it doesn't need to be 100% plants for it to be effective. More plants, the better, but there can be a fine balance, and anything more than what you were doing before is beneficial in the research. So next slide. Exactly. So plant-based isn't actually a diet. So veganism is usually referred to as it's a vegan diet. But it is actually more of a lifestyle. And we often see with people who implement a vegan diet over time, they will start to gradually bring in more animal-based foods, realizing that they're not able to quite meet their needs with purely plants. So it's sort of come out in the research that we're moving away from it being a diet, and it's more a lifestyle, as in being conscious of eating more plants and being aware of how that benefits your health and your lifestyle and the environment and the community. So it's really also moving away from foods to avoid. So rather than focusing on foods to eliminate, plant-based is becoming more focused on what foods to include. And like Dr. Lee was saying, like considering actually some basic foods that we might have walked past in the supermarket are much more exciting than they seem. So the potential of kiwi skin, like eat it with the skin, that's so exciting. My mother was telling me to do that at school. She was studying nursing and talked about like stress and digestion, and the skin helps your digestion. And all the kids at school would laugh at me and say, like, there's this special spoons with a knife. You should cut the kiwi open and eat it with a spoon. You're doing it wrong. And I said, no, my mother is a nurse. I'm eating it with the skin because she washed it and she said it's good for me. And I don't mind it. I'm used to it. But for some people who were not doing that before, the skin might be irritating to their tongue. I've also heard people say that when they started eating kiwi with the skin because they heard it was good, they got a rash in their mouth because they weren't used to it. They went from 0 to 100 and it irritated their mouth. But when they did it occasionally and built it up to like occasionally eat it with the skin, occasionally eat it without, they noticed that the sensitivity went away and their body got more used to it, which leads me into the topic of creativity and health empowerment. A risk of plant-based, or the term vegan, is people want to do it perfect. Anything more of plants that you were consuming than before is fantastic. So you don't need to eliminate everything and have your foods to avoid list comprehensive in order to do plant-based well. Doing plant-based well is anything where you feel better and you feel empowered. So curious about, I'm consuming these foods, I'm interested in eliminating them, asking, why do I think that might not be good for me? So what have I noticed? What's the changes that I've recognized that are beneficial when I eat less of that food? So I would encourage anyone who's not quite at plant-based fully, be gentle with yourself and just be curious about the potential of foods. So a lifestyle, variety, creativity, health empowerment. We did feel limited in the past by thinking plant-based was less accessible. It was more fancy perhaps, or more expensive, but there is a lot of creativity to be had in the foods that are familiar to us, and realizing, for example, as Dr. Lee was mentioning, these foods we know are beneficial, like nuts and seeds, fruits and vegetables. If we're just adding these to standard recipes that we were having before and just adding on, it can be a big step forward, as long as we're consistently adding a little bit more and being aware that that's something we want to continue with because it feels good. Next slide. Exactly, yes, that one. So yeah, everything we do to integrate more plants into our daily routines, that is plant-based in the research, according to food sciences, according to human nutrition, according to a variety of medical fields. Anything more than what you were doing before is beneficial. So if you're having a slice of bread with a slice of cheese, you could swap out the cheese for some hummus and then add some sprouts on top. So you could add some greens. You could, instead of just having some nuts, you could have some nuts and a piece of fruit, or some nuts and some greens, or if you're having a salad, or as a side salad to a main dish. So if you're having a risotto, you could have a risotto with some salad with it. So anything that you're adding in there, being playful with the recipes without having to eliminate things you were really enjoying, just adding to what your baseline is helpful. So next slide, and staying hydrated. So part of my work with your super is focused on efficacy. So foods don't work for us if we don't eat them. So it's really important that plant-based tastes good. And that's why with a lot of our mixes, we provide an abundance of recipes, like sweet and savory for different tastes. The whole thing with the mixes is that they're practical. And you can also notice, and I would encourage you at home to experiment for yourself, and experiment perhaps with people that you know who haven't tried the mixes before, the difference between opening up the can and smelling it versus mixing it in with a recipe, or mixing it in with a water and a latte. The aroma of the whole food ingredients versus when it's mixed with water or with a plant-based milk or within a recipe, it's very different. So different aspects of the nutritionals will be activated depending on what medium it's mixed in. And our initial impression of opening the can is that it's fresh. We know that the ingredients are whole. This also complicates the variety of aroma we can experience, and it is seasonal, that some plants will have higher or less chemical composition because they're adapting to their environment. So I would encourage you, in terms of the functionality, understanding the importance of taste and smell is a reflection of those functional aspects of the food being beneficial for us. And generally, there is a complexity of sweet and sour and spicy. So we do our best to formulate in a way that they are delicious. And sometimes they've got a bit of a kick to them. And that's why we experiment with recipes, to make sure that the kick that's provided is balanced. So yes, using the mixes as a way to like easily integrate them into your routine and then develop your momentum of adding in new recipes you might not have tried before. So every grocery shop, every recipe, meal, snack, it counts. So every little step that you do that's good is good for you in the future, good for your body in the future. Everything you buy today that's in your cabinet, in your kitchen, is nourishing you tomorrow and the next day. So every challenge that comes up, every day that you need a little bit more help, that help can be found in the kitchen and how you set yourself up right now. So nourish yourself now for everything you have going on in the future that you are and may not be aware of. Nourishing, thriving with challenge is what food does for us. It encourages us to keep a momentum so that we can keep up with what we want to be doing. Next slide. Yes, so this is a definition of functional foods. So functional foods and superfoods can be described interchangeably. This hasn't been clear in the past. In the research, it's becoming much more clear. So foods and ingredients that have been demonstrated, that there's evidence, that there's strong evidence, and that includes scientific evidence and traditional use, that people have noticed benefits, that these foods affect at least one target function in the body beyond basic nutritional effects, so that we're actually feeling more well, more healed. We can feel empowered after we consume these foods, much more than when we were eating things that we weren't paying attention to as much to before. So in a way that either enhances our state of health of well-being and or reducing the risk of disease. So we are able to thrive when we're consuming these foods. We feel the difference. And biologically, there is a measurable difference. A functional food, to be a functional food as a definition, must remain in a normal form. What does that mean, like a normal food form. So rather than it being pills or capsules, they need to be in a form we are actually interacting with the taste and the smell and the texture in our mouths in order for those effects to be considered significant enough, because we actually have a microbiome not only in our gut but also in our mouth. And our microbiome in our mouth is constantly changing and adapting based on what we ate. So we need to be able to actually interact with the ingredients and anticipate what we're about to eat even before it comes into our mouth. Our brain, our eyes, our senses, the smell, the knowledge of anticipating what I'm likely to experience when I consume this, everything's already changed. Even just the thought of the food will change the microbiome composition within your mouth. Our bodies are incredibly clever. This also applies to our activities. So the foods we eat nourish what we do. So if what we're going to be doing is going to be more challenging, whether it's physically or mentally, we want to add in foods that will support us in those times of increased demand. And that's what functional foods are really useful for. When we know we have high demand, that we're not confident we're going to be able to meet because we have rushed meal times, we don't have the breaks, perhaps if I have underlying conditions that are affecting our digestion and we just don't feel well and we don't feel nourished enough from our food. So we might be getting a headache, we might have low blood sugar, we might just genuinely feel like we need to snack all the time in order to keep the energy consistent, because we're not getting enough to meet those daily demands. And that's where functional foods are really helpful, because you get a big bang for your buck. Small dose, small portion, potent, powerful, significant. And yes, I have references there, so you're welcome to take a screenshot of those, or you can look later. Really interesting papers. All the references I've included in this are very much worth the read, and they're not too complicated and wordy. They're interesting articles that are quite clear to read through. So next slide. Yes, and my animation. Exactly. So you'll also notice when you go on our website, we have like categories of functions for the mixes. We've got like a big overview of how the body systems work and how different systems interact with each other and give feedback. So if you implement anything to support your immune health, that's also going to potentially benefit your hormonal health. When you're doing things that are benefiting your hormonal health, this is also benefiting your mental health and your metabolism and your focus and cognition and ability to solve complicated problems more effectively. This will also have side effects for your cardiovascular system, your breath rate, your heart rate. Things will nourish each other. So we don't need to heal everything at once. The body provides feedback, and when it provides feedback that I'm more nourished now than I was before, that'll have a flow-on effect to let the rest of the body know we can chill now. We've got resources that we need to heal and thrive, and we've got the energy that we need, and we can transform it how we need. So a lot of the power of food is comfort and confidence. So comfort, that I feel better when I eat these foods, which can be a complicated relationship from childhood with the smells and the aromas that we associate with feeling soothed and feeling safe, as well as feeling confident that when I eat this, I'm going to have the energy I need for whatever I'm about to do. So a great example of this, so I also studied sports nutrition quite deeply, and I'm a marathon runner. I really love running hilly, foresty marathons, so in like different terrain, and the topic comes up all the time, carb loading. My version of carb loading is I love figs. Figs are a risk food for me. When I was growing up, my grandfather had a cherry tree, a fig bush. It wasn't really a tree, it was more of a bush, and a pomegranate bush. So I ate them straight from the source. Very aromatic, very colorful. Don't wear white shirts when consuming them, because those colors will not come off. They are definitely very potent functional foods. But for me, carb loading before a marathon is eating my weight in figs. So I'll probably have like 6 to 8 big juicy figs, and I'll run marathons when it's sort of fig season. That's carb loading. It doesn't need to be pasta. It doesn't need to be a lot of the foods that are traditionally used. And I know I have the confidence that I love those foods. And after I've eaten the figs, I'm going to sleep well, I'm going to feel happy, I'm going to feel safe, I'm nourished, and I'm going to sleep really well. And I'm going to wake up the next morning. I carb load the night before. I wake up the next morning and I've still got that buzz feeling because I don't eat figs, fresh figs regularly. It's a special occasion, which gets me revved up in preparation for the marathon. So however we implement those functional, nourishing foods can be very unique with a positive association, recognizing I know I'm going to feel good and I know it's going to give me what I need. So exactly, and we have here the reference like the effects of plant-based diets on the body and the brain, a systemic review. And a big part of that is that we also have something called the cortisol awakening response, our car. Our car resets every morning. Our car, every time we wake up in the morning, we are anticipating the challenges for the day. And so basically our body's already revved up for, okay, I've got a meeting on, I've got a presentation on, I've got to run, I've got appointments, I've got deadlines, I've got people who want things from me that I may or may not be able to deliver based on what I prepared yesterday. So our car is revved up from the moment that we are conscious out of sleep. And basically we can reset our car for the next day. So everything you do from when you wake up, your body has saved that information so that the next day it's going to anticipate from the day before how prepared you are going to be for whatever challenges come up. And part of that is your morning ritual. So you can actually wake up with your car revving. Your cortisol is immediately peaked up. Like, I'm stressed today. I'm not going to be on time. People are going to be disappointed in me. I'm going to let someone down. Who knows? It's revved up. Sometimes we just feel it. We don't even know why. It's just revved. So you can actually calm your cortisol down by sitting down and having a nourishing breakfast and taking the time to go, no, I'm sitting down and creating a safe space for myself right now, or I'm integrating my ritual. Perhaps I don't have time to have a sit down breakfast, I don't have the appetite, whatever, but we can implement steps in the morning. So breath is important, our posture when we're eating, 2 feet on the ground, straight posture so that our organs have space to move, our stomach has space to move, our lungs, and everything we implement there, taste, smell. So lemon water is a popular one. You get the freshness of the lemon taste. You can use the shot. I do the super green shot in the morning. I love the super green shot. That's a throwback from me from when I was a student because I have an association with greens. I worked in a smoothie store and we had a wheatgrass press, and we did wheatgrass and barley grass. And when I was at university, we did herbal clinics with spirulina. So I love to have a greens shot in the morning. So I'll do greens with some citrus, whether it's lemon or something else seasonal. Yes, so just having a ritual in the morning that's connecting calm, comfort, soothing, and nutritionals, where you know that you're going to feel better once you've consumed it, and you've got that texture in your mouth to remind you that you're nourished. And it leaves you with a clean mouth taste, which reduces the risk of you snacking on sweets later. So next slide. Exactly. So I did a little fun little video clip here. We'll play that in a moment. I just wanted to introduce this concept of curiosity. So curiosity about how your body works. Like, what, maybe I don't exactly know why I feel like this, but I can definitely figure out what helps me feel better, and what I know helps me feel better and feel better for longer, that I know this is good for me. So I might feel better if I eat this bag of chips for now, but then I'm going to look at the empty packet and have perhaps regret for going, I wish I hadn't eaten the whole packet. Once it's open, it's gone. There are risks. We can set boundaries around those. But what we can do is be curious about what else could I implement that could give me the same comfort, but that I also have the association that I'm nourished from it. So, perhaps I also want something crunchy. My favorite thing, I love mung bean sprouts. So if I know that there's a risk that I'm going to perhaps eat a food that I might regret later, I preface it going, first, okay, I'm going to have that. I'm allowed. I'm not going to deprive myself because it's important for my emotional, mental health, but I'm going to have some fruit before. I'm going to have some spinach. I'm going to have a handful. I love mung beans. So I sprout them and I love them because they're crunchy. I ate them constantly when I was pregnant. They were just the consistency made me feel better. And they're easy to digest, energizing, potent, really good for your gut. They help prevent you from overeating. And they're crunchy and they're good bang for your buck. So you can just buy like a 500-gram little bag and you can make like 2 kilos of mung beans, and they're just crunchy and fabulous, and you can have them sweet and savory, but like have something before. Beginner, I've recommended Dr. Lee's book. It is sort of semi-advanced, but what I love about the way he organizes it is it makes so much sense to follow his reasoning, and he's written it in a very easy to digest way, pun intended. So I would say if you're really into the curiosity of like how foods work in my body, his book is a great place to start, and you've just been introduced to what a fabulous human he is. Definitely worth the read. Advanced level, so for anyone who's perhaps already dabbled in nutrition, done a study course, or is working with a nutritionist and is really into science, I've done an advanced version. This book was published last year. I have no affiliation with the authors. It's just really incredible. So phytonutrients in food. So I had the hardcover of this one. I bought the hardcover and the digital version because I'm just highlighting it all the time. It has chapters like factors affecting the phytonutrient bioavailability. So like, it's not just about what I ate, but how much my body gets from what I eat, and what influences that. So if I have a high protein meal and drink a cup of black tea, it's possible that the black tea might partially inhibit the absorption of the protein. I had clients in the past who drank a lot of black tea all between meals. The book's on the presentation here. You can have a look, you can screenshot it. So Dr. Lee's is To Beat Disease, and this one's the phytonutrients, so from food from traditional to rational use. So it references, this is what it was understood to be traditionally, and this is how it was used traditionally, and this is what we found out from science about the form, the dose, and the interacting factors when we study how they work in humans. So yeah, strategies to enhance the bioavailability of nutrients. So what foods to combine. Tip here for thyroid health, for example, is, yes, I'm conscious of the time, is that for selenium, you can eat Brazil nuts. And Brazil nuts, however, you need to chew them well so that your enzymes in your mouth mix to break it down to get the selenium out of it. So the combination of eating, say, 4 Brazil nuts a day and chewing them well will increase the bioavailability of the selenium from when you eat Brazil nuts. Exactly. So next, oh no, sorry, not next slide. Speaking of like fabulous foods and the power of them, please, this little clip here, Jen, if you could play that, this is really fun.
Chili peppers produce a compound called capsaicin, which gives them their fiery burn. But capsaicin only works on certain targets. Feathered dinosaurs, I mean birds, lack the molecular receptors necessary to feel the heat, so they can pop chili peppers like candy. But if mammals like us eat them with our spice-sensitive taste receptors, then lucky for us, our bodies have figured out nutritious uses for many of these chemicals, from vitamins to antioxidants. Even though most of our favorite flavorful plants are technically little poison factories, don't worry, the benefits of eating fruits and vegetables far outweigh any risks. So don't use this as an excuse not to finish your broccoli.
Exactly. So, I mean, there are lots of blogs and articles about phytates and how certain nuts need to be activated to get the nutrients out of them. But if we chew well and if we sit with our food, our body does the activation itself. What tends to happen is we eat too fast. Which is why solutions like having the powder is a way of processing that makes the nutrients more easy for us to break down and digest. Chewing well does this, sitting down and taking time for a meal, but a lot of us we can't. And often if we're stressed, part of the thing with stress is it's fight or flight. So your body wants to run. So it's not secreting enzymes to digest the food because it says we don't have time for that, and digestion is very energy intensive and it prioritizes our energy. So foods that are very aromatic, foods that are triggering our taste buds, like chilies, and adding things that are really aromatic from the moment you cut it open. So, you know, the smell of the kitchen when you have freshly sliced cucumber or freshly sliced lemons are a great way to start the day, just to have something fresh to stimulate your senses, to make your body more capable of getting the most out of your food. Exactly. So next slide. Myth busting, so much fun here. So fruit sugars are not bad. Sugar is not bad. Fruit, sugars come with all of the things together so that our body uses the nutrients and the sugars and the fibers and the waters to enable our body to do its best work. So not true. No more animal products. going from 0 to 100 is not healthy for everybody. So suddenly eliminating a huge group of foods that you've been consuming regularly is going to cause a disruption where your body has to adapt to going, okay, this is the new normal. What I would rather recommend is gradually eliminating foods, and then seeing how you're feeling and recognizing what else suitable alternatives are in those recipes. Or instead of eating dairy products, instead of having cheese, what's my alternative? And does that meet my needs, not just nutritionally, but like that I like it? Plants don't contain enough protein. Of it, like that, we know, surely we all know that that's not true. They're full of proteins. Iron and B12 deficiency can come for a lot of different reasons. It's not only occurring in people who are vegan. People who consume a lot of sources of iron and B12 are also coming out iron and B12 deficient. So there's a lot of underlying causes there for that are not purely regarding what foods you're getting in. Exactly. So next slide. Not true. None of that's true. So exactly, the power of plant-based nutrition is that, yeah, we have such an abundance of sources and possibilities and a lot to play with. Disease prevention, cost effective, it's environmentally friendly, so it's sustainable. It's something that we can do consistently, and whatever we do is beneficial. So every little step that we take is significant. And I wanted to do a thing here regarding the power of activity for someone. Very welcome to all experiment at home. Apples are amazing. Dr. Lee also talked about 2 apples a day. I would encourage you to test, rather than eating the apple from the side, to eat it from the base and eat it with the core. I challenge you to eat it with the core. The core of the apple is incredibly nourishing. So I challenge you to see what it's like to chew and taste the core, and that you could eat this apple with nothing left. Your body will get the most out of the whole apple from eating it from the bottom up. I challenge you to try this, and you will recognize the difference of what you're getting out from just an apple. So yes, I'm almost finished, and then I can answer some of the questions. The B12 one is also a good one. Limitations, yes, education, understanding what the possibilities are, what we can play with. Also shame, I didn't really write that there, but that can be quite an aspect of like, oh, I feel like I'm eating bad. And when we're in a space of feeling sort of shame and guilt, it's very hard to make positive health changes. So I would just encourage, instead of shame and guilt about I'm not eating right, or I'm not doing it as well as I could, curiosity of like, okay, what could I do consistently that I like and that I know is healthy. Having the best mentors, so people around you to support you and encourage you and that you feel empowered by. Gradual implementation of habits, work with what you're doing now and just build and let yourself have time to evolve. Yes, and hesitating of going, oh no, like all or nothing. If I'm not all plant-based and I'm stuffing it up and I shouldn't even bother. No, don't do that to yourself. Don't hesitate. Lean into that hesitation and go, what am I actually concerned about here? Why am I thinking that this couldn't work? What is that? Let me unpack that and lean into that. And then through leaning into that and exploring that a bit more, you're actually going to find a lot more opportunities where you're going, I can actually do that. That's a great idea. I never thought of it that way before. Don't turn away, lean in. Exactly. So informed sources. If someone makes an outrageous statement that sounds too good to be true, just find out where they're getting the information from. Like why, how, why? I want to know, not just because I'm skeptical, even though skepticism can be great because it means we're curious, but I'd like to know how and why that could work for me. Yeah, and next. Exactly. This is something that I work with our CX team. So our people, if you write to happy at your super, yeah, we talk about a lot to do with this interaction with food and people. And there are a lot of different ways that we can feel like we're not getting what we need. And so this was something that I've talked about with the team. And so if you speak to them, they're also going to be very aware of this. This is in the background. We're always considering how can we empower people? So being aware of where is my seeking coming from? Am I feeling depleted? And I want to feel more nourished, that I can thrive? Am I feeling like I'm dependent on caffeine or sugar or gluten? Or is there a food group that I'm feeling dependent on that I need to eat this in order to feel okay? Otherwise, I'm going to have withdrawals. Am I just feeling disrupted, that it's just too much and I don't even know where to start? Or am I driven and I'm pushing through and I'm actually noticing I'm at risk of burning out? Or am I disconnected and just recognizing I don't even know what's going on and why. And so it's always good to sort of reflect on where am I right now, and then prioritizing what do I want to notice a change in, and how can I measure that change, and how can I make sure that whatever I do to address that change is reasonable and something I can be consistent with, because the ultimate goal is that you feel like you can thrive regardless of the conditions, that you have it within you. Everything that you eat, every momentum that you make, every step forward that you do is you evolving and adapting to whatever challenges lay ahead. And foods nourish what we do. It's not just about the food, but it's also what we do over the day is nourished by everything that we consume, and then we share that energy with everyone else around us. Next slide. Yeah, so here's an example that if you talk to our customer service team, I definitely encourage participation and asking questions. So yes, this is, for example, something that I threw together when I get feedback from the teams about complicated questions. Yeah, disconnected. And then if someone describes to us how they're feeling disconnected and how it's impacting them, I'll talk to them about their greens. Perhaps they're saying they're dependent on caffeine. I'll offer power matcha, consider their protein intake, plant protein, skinny protein. And I'll ask people about what kind of recipes they like. And so if they're feeling disrupted, we can just encourage like a reset, reorganize. Let's just do a detox bundle and just get that reset and figure out which parts are ringing for me the most. Driven, I have high performance and I need to keep that going. Protein, greens, antioxidants, yeah, dependent, also looking at hormones and routines. Depleted, basically, let's just nourish you, like give you the full package, and then gradually see how you adapt over that phase. And then maybe we need to just limit things a little bit, overnourish at the start, and then pull back and then prioritize which things to continue with when you're not feeling as depleted, because once you're feeling more nourished, you'll be able to better differentiate what is working best for you and which to continue with. Exactly. Yeah. So that's from the customer service support background. I think that's my last slide. Yeah, that was me. So yeah, I love this. I went a little bit over. Thank you for your attention. Please, questions, welcome.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sam. And thank you for sharing that knowledge. I know there's been a lot of questions. I'll give you one question. And then if you want, there's a bunch in the chat too that are also our customer experience team will help answer. But one question is, you talked a lot about apples and just eating apples. And I think there's a lot of questions on one, consuming apples late afternoon or evening. People have heard that it causes too much acid in the stomach. Is that true? And if the seeds are actually okay to eat or not eat, is that a myth? What are your thoughts?
So I think the thing with the seeds is apricots, that the cyanide is from apricot seeds. They're very difficult to eat enough of because they're very bitter. Apple seeds are totally fine to eat and chew. They're great. Late in the evening, so stomach acid, that might be theoretical, that it's a theory, that it's a fruit and it's got fructose in it and it increases your stomach acid. There's no evidence of that in human nutrition. There's really no way to measure that unless you get someone to eat an apple and then stick a tube down and get their stomach acid. So I would say no, that's a myth. However, it is possible that you could say you experience indigestion. I would say apple as dessert. So apple with a protein, or like if you've had a meal. So if you've had indigestion in response to a food, accompany that food with other foods and test it again. It might not be the food, but it might be the food in isolation when you combine it with another food so that there's already stuff in your gut mixed up. There's different enzymes in there, then you might not have such a problem anymore. The symptoms might not be food related. It might be how we're eating the food. So if you eat an apple after you've had some protein or after a main meal, it might be fine.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Sam. Such great information. I know everyone loved that. And just a reminder that you can book one-on-one time. So definitely reach out to happy@yoursuper.com. Stay connected with us, get all your questions answered.